What comes to mind when I think about the Clinton-Epstein story is there's this quote you may remember that Hillary Clinton came forward with in 2014. She said, "We came out of the White House not only dead broke, but in debt. As I recall, we were something like $12 million in debt." And that sticks out to me when I think about the Epstein-Clinton affair. It's been reported by the New York Post that Jeffrey Epstein is on the White House visitors logs in the 1990s at least 17 times. We know that the Bill Clinton State Department rented out a 5-story mansion to Jeffrey Epstein directly after it seized it from the government of Iran. And then we know that Jeffrey Epstein's lawyers testified in court that Epstein helped set up the Clinton Foundation in the early 2000s. 2001, 2002 is when Epstein began flying Bill Clinton around on his Africa tour as they were setting up the Clinton Foundation. We know from the Epstein files that Epstein's, one of the ways that he seems to capture people in network is by getting politicians towards the end of their government service as they're transitioning into the private sector, hooked up with lucrative private sector deals that leverage their government connections. This was something that Epstein did with Ehud Barak, the prime minister of Israel, who was then the defense minister when he was poached by Epstein. Did this with Bill Burns, who was the deputy secretary of state when he went on to the Carnegie Foundation before he became CIA director. Did this with Kathy Rumler, who was the White House counsel, who then went on to represent the Rothschild Bank and then Goldman Sachs, and appeared to have done this in some respect with President Clinton. He's in and out of the White House 17 times. He's directly leasing from the Clinton State Department, and then is immediately 2001 is when basically the Clinton's fresh out of office, starts the Clinton Foundation, is being flown around by Epstein. And I would not be surprised if Epstein's donor network were early contributors to the Clinton Foundation. I think this is one of the questions that, one of the lines of questioning that the world is eagerly awaiting in terms of the depositions that just took place with respect to President Clinton. The Clinton Foundation has been a font of corruption, and to get the Epstein side of that story would be fascinating.
Do we think we're going to? I mean, what would be most helpful, the way you normally take a deposition, is you get interrogatories and you get document requests on the party before you sit down with them, and then you pour over all that information, the written admissions, and then the documents that relate to any issue you want to ask him about, so that you can shove the document in his face and say, what is this? What's this loan? What was this job that was provided? I don't know if they have all of that with Bill and Hillary, and thus the cross-examination, which is what a deposition really is, may be less effective.
That's very possible. I would say that, even if you had those, I do suspect, as you pointed out, this is a president who, couldn't remember if he got a blowjob 5 minutes ago from an intern while he was president of the United States. This is someone who will haggle with you over what the definition of is, and who pre-set up his testimony by reminding the room that his memory is not what it used to be. I just can't recall. So, even if
he's going for a well-meaning man with a poor memory. He's going for the Joe Biden defense. Yes. That stopped him from getting criminally charged.
Right. That's exactly right. The Robert Hur. These are crimes, but unfortunately, he's a senile old man, and we don't think that a jury would convict. So here's a get out of jail free card. But the fact.
Meanwhile, he's not being looked at for criminal charges, but he's being looked at for information to try to put together a more complete picture of Jeffrey Epstein and what we've known about Jeffrey Epstein and didn't know. And by the way, why nothing has been done about Jeffrey Epstein, including during Biden's 4 years as president.
Well, what's frustrating to me is we have these Justice Department files. We appear to have about half of the total. It's very voluminous, but there does appear to be huge portions missing. For example, it's been reported that apparently about 3 years worth between 1999 and 2001, the Justice Department files basically cut off. This is a very strange gap. It's the tail end of the Clinton presidency, and there are basically no Epstein files in this DOJ drop from mid 1999 to 2000. Well, this is a very difficult thing to explain. Well, no one has really offered a good explanation of this. There's a lot of very strange. I don't want to sidebar this with some of the strange kind of 9/11 issues around Jeffrey Epstein, but it is a very serious missing chunk of the Epstein piece, especially given that Epstein was asked to be on the 9/11 Shadow Commission, and was in some of these very strange networks around both the military, statecraft, intelligence apparatus, both pre and post 9/11. But those are critical missing years. Those are also the years that Epstein himself FOIA'd the CIA for any open and acknowledged agency links between the CIA and himself. That was in 1999 while Bill Clinton was president. At that time, in 1999, is when Jeffrey Epstein resolved his dispute with the Bill Clinton State Department over a 5-story mansion that had been seized from the government of Iran. This is American taxpayer property, and it was rented out solely and exclusively to Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein then violated the terms of the lease, not only by not paying it, so the taxpayer was eating the bill, but subletting it out to the criminal defense lawyer for the French Connection and Pizza Connection drug ring cases, which are both drug ring cases and involving alleged CIA protection of drug rings in France and Italy.
Wait, I'm lost. But let's just pause for a second. Quick question: Is this the mansion that Jeffrey would ultimately purchase? That was the largest mansion in New York, or is that a different?
This was prior to that. This was the.
Okay, so you're saying when Bill Clinton was president, his State Department seized this townhome from the Iranians, and then he leased it, or the State Department, I guess, allowed Jeffrey Epstein to lease it, and it resulted in subsequent legal disputes with respect to Jeffrey Epstein's non-payment, or what?
Yeah, so Epstein stopped making payments. So it was $15,000 a month in the 1990s. And this was, this giant property overlooking Central Park, 5 stories, Upper East Side. And then he violated the lease terms by subletting it out to this lawyer connected to these very high profile cases involving some pretty seedy elements of the intelligence overworld and criminal underworld. What I'm getting at here is if this Justice Department and our legislative oversight bodies want to show their seriousness in terms of pursuing the Clinton leads here, I'm calling for full declassification of all State Department and CIA files, because all we have are a fraction of the Justice Department and by extension FBI files. But the fact is the State Department would have had to have diligenced Jeffrey Epstein in the 1990s. We know that Epstein himself appeared to think that he was CIA adjacent enough to FOIA the CIA itself for any open and acknowledged agency links in 1999.
Why would he do that?
Well, Jeffrey Epstein's had, by that point, for 20 years, been doing kind of CIA adjacent banking work, banking is putting it charitably, but Bear Stearns, where he started his career.
Wait, we'll go back. I do want to talk about the Bear Stearns thing, but just before you get to, I'm looking for just the broad answer on why he would FOIA the CIA about what context they had with himself. I mean, something he would presumably know. Well, but I guess he's looking for what contacts or work they've done on him that he didn't know about.
Epstein did it through a lawyer using the Privacy Act, which is a way of basically pre-FOIAing what other people could see about you. So this is before he became a public figure. He wasn't really publicly known until 2001, 2002. That was when he first became the public took an interest who's flying President Clinton around Africa. That was really when his public star began to rise. And before that, he was seeing what the public would see about him if they were to FOIA the CIA for any open links.
International disputes, inflation, rising national debt, digital currency. There's a never-ending list of reasons gold has risen over 700% in the last 20 years. And a never-ending list of reasons smart Americans diversify a portion of their savings into precious metals with Birch Gold Group. Gold can thrive during uncertainty, which is why it's a crucial part of a balanced financial strategy. It gives you peace of mind, given all the events that could impact the U.S. economy. See if holding gold in a tax-sheltered retirement account is right for you. Birch Gold can help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into an IRA in gold. Just text MK to the number 989898 to receive your free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, consider letting Birch Gold help you diversify with gold so you too can have peace of mind, regardless of the uncertainty. Text MK to the number 989898. All right, let's go back. Let's go back on the Bear Stearns thing, because this is just getting ready for today and reading what you've said about that before is the first I understood.
Yes.
What the Bear Stearns, because I've heard that thrown around. The Bear Stearns connection that Jeffrey Epstein started, he had a stint there, this massive New York bank at the time. And you posit that his stint there and the man he worked for and the work he did was critical to everything that would happen in Jeffrey Epstein's life thereafter, most especially these nefarious ties with the guys he was subletting the $15 million or whatever townhouse from Iran to, and his intel connections, call him an asset, call him whatever you want, but his connections, which were ubiquitous in intel, with some very shady people and entities. And you posit that it all started when he was a very young man hired to work at Bear Stearns. Okay, go there.
So in 1975 and 1976, there were the CIA was brought to heel for the first time in its history. This gave rise to the Jimmy Carter years between 1976 and 1980. There were reforms put on the CIA that prevented it from doing its usual type of operations. And so CIA exiles created this network basically in the Middle East and in Africa and Central Asia that was called the Safari Club, which was set up to basically have an offshore CIA that was unrestricted by the new handcuffs put on the CIA. And through that, a bank called BCCI it had been created in 1972, but it became operationalized in 1976 as a way of running money to the Mujahideen. The Mujahideen is kind of Islamo-fascist group that would become Al-Qaeda and ISIS. This was when the CIA was funding Osama bin Laden when he was a freedom fighter against the Russians during the Cold War. And the Mujahideen were financed by drug money on the Golden Crescent that was laundered through the BCCI bank, and the guns that were shipped to the Mujahideen, the money was laundered through the BCCI bank. Bear Stearns was one of the top.
So just to recap, we're talking about the Mujahideen, the Osama bin Laden linked group that we would wind up dealing with after 9/11. But they were on the opposite side of the Soviets in the 80s, and so were we. So we did have this weird post-CIA group called the Safari Club that was using this BCCI bank to launder its money and send out payments to bad guys who we thought could do some good for us, like against the Soviets. And well, we're going to get to the Epstein connection, but that you're just setting it up. This is like former exiled CIA guys in the Safari Club using this BCCI bank to funnel money to groups like the Mujahideen because they were anti-Soviet, as were we. Keep going.
Exactly. And so you need a broker to be able to clear and put together these trades for the money laundering. The Safari Club was run by a guy. It gets its name from the Mount Kenya Safari Club in Kenya, which is where they stationed this group. That was run by a guy named Adnan Khashoggi, who at the time was rumored to be the wealthiest guy in the world. Time magazine floated that rumor itself. He was the world's most prolific arms dealer. He was a Saudi, based in Saudi Arabia, and he would come to be the CIA's key middleman during the Iran-Contra affair in the 1980s that consumed the Reagan administration. If you remember, Epstein, under Bill Clinton, was leased a building directly seized from Iran. Adnan Khashoggi was the Saudi billionaire middleman between the U.S. and Israel during the covert operation to run guns to the Iranians to fight off Saddam Hussein's Iraq and to run skim profits from that to run guns to the Nicaraguan Contras against the Sandinistas.
All right, but we're into our two different lanes here, Iran-Contra. And so how do they connect?
They connect because Bear Stearns was moved about $13 billion worth of transactions through, for BCCI that was used to launder the cash for this CIA work that was running the guns to the Mujahideen and then later the entire Iran-Iraq war. And so you see all throughout the Epstein files that Epstein is involved with the U.S. military, that he's involved on DARPA projects, that he's working with military contractors, that he's getting intel about the impact of military activities on prospective deals, how he can potentially seize millions from the government of Libya after NATO involvement with this. And what I'm trying to impress upon people is that there is a banking and military nexus that goes back decades. And in Epstein's career, he had a 31-year continuous relationship with Bear Stearns. Even though he formally stopped being employed there in 1981, he claimed to have a 31-year continuous relationship until the day that the bank collapsed. And the New York Times even reported that late in the 1980s, he was picking up the phone at home, answering it as Bear Stearns, even though he was on his own.
Wow.
I want to make something also clear that I don't think has been widely reported in the Epstein files. There is an incredible document that it appears to be around 2018. It's a 6-page legal memo that it does not have the name of the author. I don't know if it was Justice Department or FBI originated, but it's in the files, and it gives a list of all of the counts that could be brought against Epstein prior to his indictment in 2019 after the Miami Herald break. And it has it's a very thorough document, basically a dossier on all of the crimes and legal theories that could be pursued. And at the very end, there is a note on background information. And it states that Jeffrey Epstein used to do work for the U.S. government. It's a direct quote from in this legal memo. And it's the first time I've seen what purports to be a government document claiming that Jeffrey Epstein worked at some point directly for the United States government.
Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.